Hi, welcome to the Self-Driving Factory podcast from 3AG Systems. My name is Matthew Gears, and I'm joined by Andrew Layarda. Every episode, we're going to delve into the world of analytics, data engineering, machine learning, artificial intelligence, IoT, and pretty much anything that we think will contribute to the concept of the self-driving factory. So today, what we wanted to do was to review a study from Vodafone. It came out a couple of weeks ago, and it's called the IoT Spotlight. And so it's a report that Vodafone put together working with a company called Savanta, where they surveyed over 1,600 different businesses on a global basis to understand how IoT was affecting their business. And the reason that we wanted to go through this particular survey was because we found some really interesting insights, and we think they'll be relevant for everyone listening to this podcast. So what we're going to do today is just dive right into it and then to talk a bit more about some of these different points. So the first one that really caught our attention was the fact that IoT, of the people who actually filled out the survey, 95% of the companies saw positive return on investment coming from IoT, which we thought was just a phenomenally huge number. And there were really two main areas that this broke down into. The first was in improving operational efficiency, and the second one was in creating connected products and services. And so with what we do here at 3AG and the concept of self-driving factory, we're obviously quite interested in the first one, the improving operational efficiency. Andrew, what's your take on this?
The improving operational efficiency, it really goes to show, it validates and confirms the experience that we're having here at working with our customers. With the biggest thing that comes from, IoT, I see IoT as a form of, foundation groundwork that you put in to be able to do analytics, and that is really, it lets you then know exactly what's going on, right, with your machineries and factory and operations. The single biggest thing and the quickest thing that you'll probably notice is areas where you're not running as optimally, right? Just by putting that, surfacing the data to the end users, you immediately identify which areas are not functioning as properly, and you can take corrective actions from that point on, right? So the key is being able to see what that is.
Right, and I think that kind of matches with our experience too in general, where it's not so much the fact that it's IoT here, but just the fact that someone is actually measuring and recording and properly storing data from the real world in some sort of sensor. In my experience, what I've seen is that quite often, just creating a report has a big impact on the operation, because now people can see in real time, or not even necessarily in real time, what kind of impact their action has on the operation.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the ability to know that, what is going on and to see how their actions are affecting the operations, right? And without showing them, without the ability to be able to see that, either through IoT or any kind of data reporting in general, or dashboarding in general, then you can't do anything, right? So
right. Now, the next insight that we saw that was also quite interesting, and this was related to the whole idea of, this study was put forward and done right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. So obviously it's a dramatically changing world. And one of the questions that came up in the analysis was, well, how do you feel IoT is in terms of helping your business continuity, especially during this difficult time? And again, this one really wasn't very surprising. Given the fact that we're actually doing this podcast on video conferencing, and I'm doing it right now from my home, 84% of the adopters felt that IoT was a key factor in maintaining business continuity. Now, when I look at that, I think this is a no-brainer. If you are people walking around writing stuff on clipboards, actually physically inspecting things, and you could replace some of that with a sensor. Obviously, you're going to be doing a good job in maintaining your continuity. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, and then that's bang on, right? Replacing, people running around with clipboards or paper reports that has to be passed on from one person to another person, right? Now, as we're kind of putting this, we're aligning this conversation into the concept of self-driving factory. There's the other aspect of being able to then change the operations of the factory without needing a person or multiple people adjusting dials and things like that, right? So,
Right.
because IoT, aside from it being a data collection mechanism, automated data collection mechanism, it can also be used to then remotely issue instructions to the different devices to then operate a certain way. Yeah. Right.
Now, do you think, I mean, obviously this study was done from a telecom that's interested in telecom-oriented solutions. And IoT is obviously one that falls into that space when we're talking about 5G or even other types of like LTE-based connectivity. But if you were to, is it absolutely necessary that all these benefits have to come from IoT specifically, or do are there other ways that companies can achieve the same sort of result?
That's a great question, right? Because IoT is really, IoT is a mechanism, right? You can call it a layer of mechanism to transport data back and forth from one point to another, right? Mm-hmm. So having that is obviously great because you can then, near real time or even real time, be able to relay information to and from devices and to data repositories, right? But even without having a real-time IoT device that does the data collection and pulling from you, you would get a lot of benefit just putting in different types of mechanisms to be able to then extract data from your operations, right? And potentially then issue data back into the different equipments and software machinery, even though it's not necessarily real time, or using IoT.
Right. So IoT is sort of the medium, but not necessarily, like, it's ultimately the data that you're collecting that makes or breaks this type of system.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Right. The next one that I thought was also quite interesting is the fact that they saw that 73% of the adopters, the people who said yay IoT, they had a rather pessimistic view on the rest of the world, and they felt that those that fail to embrace IoT within the next 5 years are going to fall behind. Coming from a company where all we focus on is data and data analysis, obviously I'm fully on board for this. But it was interesting to see because these, we're not talking about just IT people that are taking the survey. We're talking here about people in a manufacturing environment, people in retail environments, and for them to sort of give this thumbs up on a fairly cutting edge technology seems quite positive, or potentially just a misleading question, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. Well, the way I see it, it is potentially that could be attributed to the excitement. That's probably one way to put it, of now being able to have better visibility of what's going on, and better, not just better visibility, but close to real time, or more indicative of what's going on right now, right? If you were to use some examples from, I shouldn't say example, looking at different customers we worked with in the past, right? One of the biggest challenge was they're not able to get a full picture of what's going on, or by the time they know what's going on, it's too late, right? With installing IoT, surfacing the data near real time, they have a better grasp of the situation. They can react better, and as a result, I think that then it transforms their thinking and their mindset into real to then realize, wow, this is clearly a long-term competitive advantage here by knowing what's going on and be able to react to it quickly.
Yeah. And again here, I think this is where the clients what we typically see happening is that we'll do something fairly rudimentary, like we'll add reporting that people can access anywhere, like a web-based reporting that people can just log in and take a look at. And just by doing that, now you've opened up everyone's eyes and they're like, oh, wow, I didn't even think that we were able to do this, because it used to take so much longer to get to this point. And so I think you're right. I think it's where, obviously there's going to be some advanced companies that are in this survey, but there's also going to be companies that were probably just doing everything off of Excel spreadsheets that someone put together once a week. And so to be able to go from that to, hey, like, that's what my factory looks like right now, or that's what my operation looks like right now. I think that jump is going to obviously make people feel like shocked at how much of an impact it actually does have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
There was, and sort of going into that, and this is the last stat that I wanted to bring up, but I think that the stat was something to the effect of approximately half of the businesses decreased their operating costs by an average of 21%. And this one was buried a little deeper. I mean, quite honestly, if I was doing a survey, that would be the title of my survey.
I know, right?
But again, I think this has a lot to do with the fact that companies are starting from a very low base in terms of truly understanding what their operation is doing. They're getting reports on a weekly basis. Some companies we've worked with at the monthly basis, and that's just the most ridiculous feedback loop you could imagine. Like, if I was driving a car and my car updated me on the status of the road in front of me once an hour, I think that would be an absolute disaster. But there are companies, multi-million-dollar companies, that would pay a fortune to get that kind of insight into their operations, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Or, your fuel gauge updates once an hour. And good luck driving long distance with that, right?
Yeah, it would have caused me problems this week for sure.
There you go.
Cool. So is there anything else that you wanted to sort of dig into from this particular survey? Was there anything that I missed?
Well, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about here related to, they talk about how in general, so within the first year of implementing IoT, 86% of the companies said that data analytics became a lot more important as a result, right? Just within the first year, right? And that is bang on in line with what we're seeing with people that different customers we've worked with, right? Once the data is surfaced, they can see what's going on. It then became a focus of, hey, I want, it's either of, hey, I want that too. I want to be able to do that too. And then it transforms into people saying, why does our data look like that? What is going on, right? And then it transforms them into a data-driven business without telling them you have to transform, right? Surface the data, show it to make it easily accessible. They transform themselves into an analytics company.
And I think personally the interesting thing there is that it's a very good risk-reward trade-off. So if you're the individual who spearheads one of these initiatives within the company, in the worst case, people say, well, we've never had, it's always been difficult for us to get this information. It's always been difficult to do the reporting. So good luck trying to improve it. But I think what we saw from the survey is if you actually are the one leading this type of project, that bar is set so low that you're going to look like a superhero if you're the one who brought this forward, or at least if you brought a partner that brought this forward to the company, right?
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
Woe though to the person who blocks the project or tries to get in the way.
Yep, exactly. Let's see. There's another thing too. They're talking about one statistics here that they talked about on the same page was related to return on investments that they're seeing, right? They kind of break down the categories into, adopted for those who adopted it less than a year, 1 to 2 years, 2 to 3 years, and beyond that, right? What's interesting is what you see is about half of them, 50%, says they see significant return of investment within a year. 52% sees within 1 to 2 years, and then 61% 2 to 3 years, and then 73% once you have it for a while, right? And again, this
Right.
goes to this kind of highlights it confirms an observation that we see as well, right? We introduce these measurements, introduce IoT, they can measure, they can see what's going on. It almost brings them into a baseline that says, okay, this is where we are, right? And if there are some low-hanging fruits that you could address, within the year, then that's where that 50% number is coming from, right? And then if you kind of plot the chart of these values, you see like it's a steady chart, and then there's this uptick of return on investments the longer you've kind of operate with this with IoT in the study, right?
Right.
I think that goes to the point where now you're able to baseline, you can see what's going on, everything is visible, then it's much easier for you to then target specific areas to improve. And introducing change sometimes is not immediate. That's just why you see the uptick later on as you kind of use the technology longer. So
Right. Cool.
yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop this particular podcast. But
yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to sort of look at some of these studies, or just sort of the things that we're seeing in the world, and sort of going forward. That's really what I'm looking for from this podcast. So we're going to try to do this on a regular basis, where we can either take a look at sort of core piece of information or report, or maybe something that we're seeing in the news, or something that we're seeing with the clients that we're working with, and just sort of dissect it and dig into it more. So thank you very much, Andrew, for your time today. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Self-Driving Factory podcast from 3AG Systems. Until next time.
All right. Until next time. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.